Welcome to the Extraordinary Everyday Podcast, where women come to be inspired and motivated to become the best version of themselves and elevate the quality of their everyday. Now, here's your host, certified life coach, Wendy Johnson.
Hello, beautiful friends. How are you doing today? I'm having the most amazing day. I was able to eat lunch outside on our patio for the first time since May. I live in the desert and it has been way too hot. And today we are finally getting cooler weather. And I'll be spending a ton of time outside for the next 8 months or so. I hope you're enjoying your week, and I'm so excited to share this episode with you. We're diving into a topic that I think is incredibly powerful, yet often overlooked, and that is priorities. More specifically, how aligning our priorities with our values can truly change our lives. We all have them, whether we're aware of them or not, but are they serving us? Are they helping us live in line with what matters most? Today, we're going to explore why priorities are so important, the common obstacles we face in sticking to them, and how we can realign our priorities to create a life of purpose, fulfillment, and peace. Let's get started. What are priorities? At their core, priorities are the things in life that we place the most importance on. They guide our decisions, actions, and even our thoughts. Whether it's family, career, health, or personal growth, these are the areas that demand most of our attention, time, and energy. But here's the thing. While we all have priorities, we don't always consciously define them. For many of us, priorities tend to be shaped by forces outside of us, like work deadlines, family expectations, or societal norms. They might not even be what we truly want or value. And when we operate with misplaced or unclear priorities, we can feel scattered, unfulfilled, angry, and stressed. Now let's talk about why our priorities important. Well, they essentially serve as a compass for our lives. When you have clear priorities, they help you stay focused on what truly matters to you. Imagine trying to get to a destination without a map or GPS. Having no clear priorities is kind of like that. You end up wandering, taking detours, and feeling frustrated because you're not sure which path to follow. Clear priorities bring us clarity. They simplify decision making because you know exactly what you say yes or no to. When you're aligned with your priorities, life feels more in flow. You're not spreading yourself thin, trying to do everything. And that is where the magic happens. But here's something that trips a lot of us up. We tend to respond to what's urgent, not necessarily what's important. Have you ever noticed that? When something feels urgent, whether it's an email, a phone call, or even a task that just pops up, we often jump to handle it without stopping to think about whether it actually aligns with our priorities. Let me give you an example. Your phone rings. Do you quickly answer it? No matter what you're doing, you may even be in the middle of a conversation with a friend, but you respond to the phone ringing. This is an example of what is urgent and not important. I don't even keep my phone on, and I rarely answer my phone. I'll choose a time when I look at the message and I return the phone call. And that is not during the time that I'm doing what's most important to me. What really bothers me at the gym where I work out is people have their ringers on and they let their phone ring and they pick up and answer the phone no matter what they're doing. I was on a Peloton and the person was on a Peloton next to me, and they started having a conversation that wasn't even important. They picked up their phone right in the middle of their workout session. I politely asked them to take the call outside because it was disrupting my workout. And we have signs all over their gym saying no phone use inside. So I find this is the most difficult problem, is responding to what is urgent, not what's important. And this concept comes from the famous Eisenhower matrix, which separates tasks into 4 categories. First is urgent and important. Second is important but not urgent. Third is urgent but not important. And the fourth is neither urgent nor important. The problem is we often get caught up in category 3, urgent but not important. These are tasks that feel pressing but don't really move us closer to our goals or reflect our values. Things like replying to non-essential emails, getting sucked into last-minute requests that don't align with your priorities, or even trivial tasks that pop up throughout the day. They seem important at the moment because they're urgent, but in reality, they pull us away from the things that truly matter. When we spend too much time reacting to urgency, we neglect the second category, important but not urgent. This is where your real priorities live. Things like nurturing your relationships, focusing on personal growth, taking care of your health, or making progress on long-term projects, such as a book. These activities don't usually scream for your attention, but they're critical to your well-being and success. The challenge here is that because they're not urgent, it's easy to push them aside in favor of more pressing, less meaningful tasks. Have you ever looked at your day and realized that the day got away from you and that you didn't exactly focus on what you wanted to work on? So now I want to share with you how to break the cycle. Breaking this cycle requires intentionality. You need to shift from being reactive to being proactive, planning your days and weeks around what's truly important to you rather than what feels urgent in the moment. One practical way is to identify your top 1 to 3 priorities each day that are aligned with your values and make sure those get your attention first. You already know what you're doing. By doing this, you'll find that you're no longer rushing through life, putting out fires, but instead making steady, meaningful progress towards what matters the most in your life. So why is it so hard to stick to our priorities? I mean, we know what's important, but sometimes it feels like we're constantly putting out fires or getting distracted. I want to give you some common culprits that throw us off track. First up, distractions. We live in a world that's full of them. Think about how many times you've picked up your phone to check an email or scroll through social media, only to realize an hour has passed. And that's time you could have spent on what's truly important to you. I understand that we want to stay in contact with family and friends on the internet, but if it's getting in the way of you connecting one-on-one with somebody, having a coffee date or a lunch, or doing something for yourself that you had planned on doing, then notice if you're using distractions to not stick to your priorities. Next is procrastination. We often delay doing the things that matter most because they feel hard or uncomfortable. We'd rather be comfortable than uncomfortable. Instead, we turn to the easy stuff like tidying up the house or binge watching a show. Sure, those things can be fun or feel productive at the moment, but do they align with your bigger priorities? Another big one is external pressure, whether it's from your work, family, or society. We often feel pulled in directions that don't align with what we value most. It's easy to say yes to things we don't want to do because we're afraid of disappointing others or we'll have FOMO. Now that we've talked about what gets in the way of sticking to our priorities, let's talk about how to align with our values. This is where the magic happens, when your priorities reflect your core values. Life feels intentional and fulfilling. Now I'm going to walk you through 5 steps to help you realign your priorities in a way that will truly support your values. Step 1 is to identify your core values. This is the foundation. If you don't know what you value most in life, it's almost impossible to set meaningful priorities. But here's the catch. Many of us haven't taken the time to identify our values. I have some questions I'd like for you to reflect on. Start by asking yourself, what matters to me at my core? When do I feel most fulfilled? What makes me feel proud or satisfied? Your core values could include family, health, personal growth, creativity, financial security, service to others, or even adventure. Take your time doing this and don't rush this process. Take some time to journal or think deeply about this. Maybe you've been putting a lot of energy into work, but deep down you value your relationships more. Or perhaps you've been so focused on others that you've neglected self-care, even though health is one of your top values. I'll go through those questions again that you could reflect on. What matters to me at my core? When do I feel most fulfilled? What makes me feel proud or satisfied? Once you have a list of 3 to 5 core values, you can start to reflect on whether or not your daily life is truly honoring them. Step 2, examine your current priorities. Now that you know your values, it's time to take a closer look at your current priorities. And here's where it can get interesting. Are your actions and time spent reflecting what you say you value? Let's say you've identified that health is a core value, but you've been skipping workouts, eating poorly, and constantly staying up late. There's a clear disconnect there. Or perhaps family is your priority, but you're spending most of your free time on social media or at work. This step requires brutal honesty. Think about how you spend your day. What do you give your time, energy, and focus to? Do your current priorities reflect your values, or are they based on habits, distractions, or external expectations? What you can do is even try a time audit for a few days. Track where your time goes. You may be surprised how much time of it gets eaten up by things that don't align with your core values. Once you have a clear picture, it's time to realign. Step 3, make adjustments. This is where you start to make the changes that will bring your life more in line with your values. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, especially if you realize you've been living out of sync with your values for a while. But remember, you don't have to overhaul everything at once. Small, consistent changes are powerful. Here are some practical steps you can take. First, reprioritize your schedule. If health is a core value, schedule time. Pick your top 3 priorities for your health. Maybe they're exercise, meal planning, and getting extra sleep. If family is your priority, set aside intentional, uninterrupted time for them. Next, you want to delegate or eliminate tasks. What's on your plate that doesn't align with your values? Can you delegate it or let it go completely? For example, if you're spending hours on minor menial work tasks that aren't truly meaningful, consider delegating them or setting stricter time limits. And another step is start saying no more often. When you say no, you're saying yes to yourself. This is a big one. When you know your values, it becomes easier to say no to things that don't align with them. Saying no might feel uncomfortable at first, but it's necessary to protect your time and energy for the things that truly matter. By intentionally shifting your focus and actions towards what matters, you'll start to notice a shift in how you feel and operate. It will become a new habit. Now, step 4 is to set boundaries. Setting boundaries is crucial if you want to stick to your priorities. When you know your values and have made these adjustments, you'll need to protect your time and energy from things that can derail your progress. Here's the reality. If you don't set boundaries, other people or distractions will fill your time for you, whether it's constant work emails, social obligations, or even your bad habits. It's easy to let your time slip away without boundaries in place. And you can set better boundaries in work, personal, and technology. If work is encroaching on your personal time, set clear limits. You could turn off your work notifications after a certain hour, or be more disciplined about not checking emails outside of work hours, such as nights and weekends. For a personal boundary, if family time is a priority, let others know when you'll be unavailable for other commitments. This means if you're on a vacation with your significant other or family member, that you let others know that you have a prior commitment. Or if it's self-care and you're focusing on self-care, carve out that time for yourself and protect it fiercely. And a technology boundary means limiting social media usage or turning off notifications during specific hours. There's so many apps that can do this for you. A digital detox day where you intentionally step away from technology can also be very beneficial. Boundaries aren't just about saying no to others. They're about saying yes to yourself and what truly matters to you. And now the last step, step 5, review regularly. Remember that priorities aren't static. Life changes, and so do our values and circumstances. That's why it's essential to regularly review your priorities and make adjustments as needed. I'm making adjustments now from the summer season. Maybe you have a wedding coming up or a baby that is coming. Your priorities will be shifting. And it's great to check in with yourself and reevaluate what is most important. And maybe what mattered most to you a few years ago doesn't hold the same weight anymore. Or perhaps new challenges have shifted your focus. For example, after a major health event, like having cancer, your values might shift towards focusing on your self-care over your career or personal ambitions. So what I'm asking you to do is schedule regular check-ins with yourself, perhaps every few months, to reassess your values and priorities. Are you still aligned with what matters most to you? Ask yourself these questions. Are you still aligned with what matters most to you? Are there new areas of your life that need more attention? Do you need to adjust your boundaries or make further changes? Doing this practice regularly helps you stay flexible and ensures that you're always living in alignment with the best version of yourself. Life is changing, and so should be your priorities. So those are the 5 steps to align your priorities with your values. Identify your core values, examine your current priorities, make necessary adjustments, set boundaries, and review regularly. It may seem like a lot of work at first, but trust me, the payoff is worth it. And when you begin to incorporate this as a practice, it will come naturally to you. When you start living in alignment with what truly matters to you, life becomes more fulfilling, purposeful, and even more peaceful. I'd love to share 2 stories with you that illustrate the power of realigning priorities and the benefits that come from doing so. One of my clients years ago, Sarah, she was an executive who had been climbing the corporate ladder for years. She worked long hours, traveled frequently, and rarely took time for herself. Well, she told herself that career success came first for her. Deep down, she valued her family and health more than anything. She would often think about how much she missed spending time with her children when they were young. They were now teenagers, and how drained she felt physically from neglecting her health. But she kept pushing through, thinking that if she worked hard now, she'd have more time later. However, later never seemed to come. Her kids were already in high school. Sarah's stress levels skyrocketed, and she began experiencing health problems, chronic headaches, lack of sleep, and a general feeling of burnout. This is when she came to me for coaching. Before she did, she had a health scare, and she was hospitalized for extreme fatigue and dehydration. During her time off, she reflected on what truly mattered. For the first time in years, she admitted to herself that her family and health were her main priorities. This prompted her to make some big changes with her work. She decided to set boundaries around her work. She was in the habit of staying late and saying yes to everything. She started delegating tasks, taking regular breaks, and refusing to respond to work emails after hours. She also dedicated time each week to exercise and planned family outings on Sundays. By prioritizing her family and health, she found she was actually more productive at work during the hours she allowed for it. She didn't feel guilty about leaving the office at 5 p.m. knowing that she was in alignment with her core values. After she made these decisions and she had worked with me in a 12-week course, the benefits were immediate. Sarah felt healthier. Her relationship with her children deepened, and the constant sense of overwhelm was lifted. She even received a promotion the next year, proving that you don't have to sacrifice what's important to be successful. She was able to hire an employee to take on a lot of those tasks that were keeping her late at work. Now, Sarah says she has the clarity of her priorities, not only her well-being, but also her career and her family. I'll leave you with one more story. I had a personal friend who was a single mom with a couple of teenagers, and she was always stressed and on the go. She juggled a full-time job as a nurse. She worked nights so that she could get her kids off to school, and she was home for them and up to pick them up at school. She tried attending her kids' school events and managing the household chores, but she barely had time to breathe. And at the time, I was teaching yoga, and I invited her to one of my yoga classes at my house. She only made it a few times, but I was so proud of her for showing up. She prided herself on being busy and productive and type A, and she rarely had time for meaningful connection with other women and for her own self-care. She felt very disconnected from her kids and from herself. She finally realized she was missing out by constantly putting work and busyness first. If she asked herself, if I'm doing all of this for my kids, why do I feel so disconnected from them? She made a shift to reprioritize her life. She had a conversation with her boss about reducing her overtime hours and setting boundaries on her work schedule. At home, she had tech-free dinners and planned weekend activities that would allow them to bond more, such as going to the zoo. Also, she started dedicating 30 minutes a day just for herself, whether it was reading, meditating, or taking a walk. She immediately benefited from improving the relationship with her kids, feeling more present, both at work and at home. And she was no longer just trying to survive each day. She was actually living in alignment with her values, which was family and connection with friends and herself. She immediately noticed a big improvement in her own mental and emotional health. Having these clear priorities made her feel more grounded and at peace. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to leave you with a thought that really sums up what we've talked about. The key to living a fulfilling life isn't in doing more, but in doing what matters most. Priorities are the compass that guide us away from the noise of urgency and toward the things that truly align with our values. That's the heart of it, really. When we focus on what matters most, on our true priorities, we stop getting lost in the chaos of the urgent and start moving toward a life that feels meaningful and aligned. It's not about doing everything. It's about doing the right things. Take time this week to reflect on your priorities. Are they serving you? Do they reflect what you care about most? If not, make some changes. It's never too late to realign. And friends, thank you so much for joining me today. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with a friend or leave a review. And as always, I'm here to remind you that it's not about doing everything. It's about doing what's most important. See you next time. Take care. Bye-bye. Hey, if you enjoy listening to this podcast, you have to come check out More You, my community of like-minded women. We show up to create the highest version of ourselves and elevate the quality of our everyday along the way. Head over to ontracklifecoaching.com/join. That's ontraclifecoaching.com/join. I'd love to see you in there. And if you haven't grabbed your copy of the Mindset Makeover, head over to ontracklifecoaching.com/makeover and get a copy that teaches and inspires you to show up as your most extraordinary self.